everyone. This is Avjit Chatterjee recording our weekly session of Chartsarefun. This is for the week of June 1st, recording this on Sunday, June 7th in the afternoon. Our Substack site is chartsarefun.substack.com. We publish daily blogs. We appreciate you subscribing with your email. It's free when the blogs come out in the morning. You'll get them. Our YouTube site is also Charts Are Fun. We do believe there are tremendous insights, fun insights in these charts, and our goal is to share these insights with you using technical analysis. We don't provide investment advice. We're not registered investment advisors, so you please use these as patterns to help you guide your decisions. Today, we will talk about the June swoon that we saw. Market sold off big, starting off with the 1st of June with cryptos, Bitcoin in particular. We can see right from the beginning of the month, starting June 1st, which is Monday, 74,000 was the key support level at Bitcoin. It started a waterfall decline, never looked back since then, printed lower lows, all the way down to testing that key low from earlier in the year at 60,000, which was from February, early February. It tested that, broke below it, bottomed at 59,000, 1,000 less than the previous bottom at 60,100, and from there started bottoming. A classic sign of bottoming is what we call as positive divergence. Notice as Bitcoin started printing lower lows in price, RSI on the hourly chart started printing higher lows. That's what we call as positive divergence. So when Bitcoin formed its eventual low at 59,100 on June 5th, which is on Friday, late into Friday, it printed a much higher low on the RSI than what it printed on June 3rd at a much deeper on the oversold level of RSI. So that pattern of a higher low in RSI as a lower low in price is how bottoming forms. So then from there, over the weekend, it recovered to 62,900. So if you're talking about from 59 to 62, that's almost 3,800 or so. If this then forms out to be a cup and handle from where we break above 62,900, you can expect this to be a move of 3,800 to 62,900. So that takes us towards 66,700 or so, which is exactly where the 200 period moving average is at 66,700. So you got to see as the market opens this week, we know that it had a huge decline last week. Perhaps market is extremely oversold, and we'll see what it does to the markets this week coming up. And we know that the big news this week is SpaceX's IPO coming into later in the week. On Friday, Wall Street will likely run up the bullishness again, with investors frenzied about this big IPO that's going to launch, which is currently priced at $135 a share. A lot of euphoria, a lot of expectation, and a pricing of 1.8 trillion for the SpaceX company. And if you look at the S&P 500's wipeout, 1.8 trillion, exactly matching the IPO that valued for SpaceX at 1.8 trillion. That was the dollar amount of the wipeout that S&P saw last week. So 1.8 trillion wipeout in S&P 500 in a matter of a day as Wall Street shifted, started raising money, investors, retail or institutional, raising money for the big IPO. Nasdaq had one of its worst days, fell over 1,100 points. That's one of the worst falls ever in Nasdaq's history. So that also tells you the extreme nature of how this collapse happened. So if you look at something that we have pointed before, which was kind of a leading sign of a Nasdaq sell-off coming, was the volatility of Nasdaq-100, which is the VXN. We see a beautiful double bottom here at 21. It tested it in April and in May. And with the market constantly moving higher all into May into June, as the semiconductors and the memory stocks kept climbing parabolically higher, notice how the Nasdaq-100 volatility refused to break down. It did not break down below 21. It maintained a higher low, and from there it broke out. And look at the big move of 31% volatility on the Nasdaq move on Friday when the sell-off happened. So if you do a measured target from 2097 to 2588, a little less than 5 points, maybe 4.09 or so, that 4.09, if you add to 2588, that measured to something about I would say not 4.09, it's about 20 to 25. It's actually 4.91. 4.91 takes us to 2588 from 2097. So at the 4.91 to 2588, you're talking about something in the order of um, uh, 30.79 or so. So from 30.79, it actually met it. It crossed it slightly at 30.85. And it also tested a level of 30 that we have seen in the past. The previous peaks that we saw in November of last year, and then in the March, right after the war started in Iran, and then the bottom that we saw towards late March was at the 33.8, 33.9 level. We didn't quite get there, but we went close to a level of 30s that in the past has acted as resistance. So you'll see it didn't close exactly the high, pulled slightly from it at 30.47. But this kind of double bottom and then the breakout higher in Nasdaq indicated what happened to QQQ. QQQ, we had also showed a pattern of a target near 749, and that's pretty much exactly where it topped out. If you look at that 722 target, that peak, it met twice towards May 14th, and then again the 722 towards May 22nd or so. That ascending triangle, higher lows with a resistance at 722, measured towards the target of 749. As it met towards the 749, we see the opposite of what we saw as in the Bitcoin positive divergence. That's where bottoming happens. Topping happens with the opposite, as in lower highs in RSI. So RSI, again, the leading indicator of the topping pattern, lower highs in RSI, negative divergence as QQQ climbed higher highs to the point where it came very close to the target of 749, meeting 748.65, and from there the breakdown. So if you look at that breakdown, it came straight down to test its rising 200 period moving average. That is near 707. It closed below it at 705. It's a possibility that 695, as we see it tested twice in May, towards May 12th and then towards May 19th. It's possible that there could be some more decline from where QQQ could come and test that. But the fact that it's close to the 200 period moving average and capitulation volume in the sell-off, we could be seeing a snapback next week. And we know that the big IPO is expected of SpaceX. The snapback cannot be ruled out. If you look at, so that percentage drop was almost close to 5%. 4.8% drop in a single day in the Nasdaq-100 ETF, QQQ. And look at the sell-off pretty much every hour except 1 hour, after the open, every hour was negative, deeply red as the waterfall decline happened, and it fell all the way from 743 peak the previous day towards a low at 705. The triggering point, there were two key things last week. One was Broadcom's earnings that came on Wednesday. So Broadcom's earnings triggered a sell-off in the semiconductor stocks and the memory stocks the following day on Thursday. It recovered some, but then Friday came the jobs data, the May jobs data. Expectation was for 82,000 jobs to be added, 88,000 jobs, not 82, 88,000 jobs to be added. It almost met double of that. It came up with 172,000 jobs that were added. Unemployment stayed steady at 4.3. The fact that double the amount of jobs got added in May gave the market concerns that there would not be any more rate cuts, even with the new FOMC chair, Kevin Warsh, which the market was thinking was going to be dovish to cut rates. But that may not be the case. The Fed's hands could be tied, if any, with the inflationary concerns of higher oil prices from the geopolitical environment, if possible, that there could be rise in rates in this year. So there's a possibility. And we already know yields, especially if you look at yields across on the treasuries, have been climbing, anticipating perhaps a rate cut in the horizon. So this is a 4.8% drop in QQQ, which is the broader Nasdaq-100 index. But look at the high-flying memory stocks. That fell 15%. There is a round-hill ETF called DRAM, quite aptly named after the memory technology DRAM. And in the ETF, look at again negative divergence as the collapse happened, as it went to higher highs, lower highs in RSI. That drop from 63 to 70, you're talking about $7. Subtract $7 from 63, 63 gives you 56. It met that target. 56 is where the target was. It came to 55.38. Key is look at the gap that it left from May 22nd. It came very close to closing the gap. If you hover around it and see where that last candle printed on May 22nd, we can see the high was 53.88 and we met 55.38. So another couple of bucks is possible for it to close out the gap, though from the perspective of what was resistance before at that 56 is now support. It is near the 56. It also has met the target from 70 to 63, that 7-point drop. So it could be oversold RSI at 25. We can see it's meeting that 56 target from the drop from 63 and testing a key support level. It could be ready for a reversal. And look at this one in particular. Again, one candle white, everything else was red candle throughout the day, as this is an hourly chart, so every candle is an hour. Constant waterfall drop into the day of 15% on the memory ETF. Semiconductors, we talked about the big gap down on the earnings from Broadcom on Wednesday night. That gap down then started getting bought into. Try to come and close that gap from where it left in the morning at 611. But look at the negative divergence on the semiconductor. As its stopping pattern happened, as it kept moving higher from the 533 towards 618, look at where RSI kept printing lower highs. So negative divergence indicated the top was coming. Key gaps, the first gap here was exactly at 539.59. If you hover over it, you can notice that that gap here was at 539.59, the high. 539.59 is where the gap started, and it exactly closed that at 539.57. So that gap has been closed. The next gap is a lot lower. If you look at this gap here, it's 525.64. That it may or may not fill just right yet, because right now, if you look at its oversold condition, RSI is at 29, extremely high volume of capitulation volume, selling out throughout the day. It could be ready for a bounce as well. So that's something for us to see. Will it come all the way down to test its 200 period moving average at 521 and then do a climb, or it's almost near a key support level? We can see that 533, it tested twice, was resistance from where it broke out. So that 533 now could be effectively support. The lows of the day was 539.57. So maybe a few dollars of downside from there. Wouldn't be surprised to see a reversal higher, a counter trend bounce in the semiconductor. This had a 10% drop. So we saw 15% in the memory ETF, 10% in the semiconductor ETF. And then the round hill also has a Magnificent 7 ETF called MAG-S. These are the Magnificent 7 companies, NVIDIA, Apple, you're talking about Google, Meta, all of those. That had a big drop. Look at its drop of big sharp waterfall at 3.78%, slightly better than the QQQ or much better than the semiconductor and the memory stock ETF drop, but 3.78 heavy volume. Look at the last 2 hours of volume, heavy volume. That breakdown, if you measure from a 68 to a 71, that's a $3 level from where a double top formed at 71 twice. From there, it broke down. So 68 to a 71 is $3. Subtract from 68, 65 is the measured target. It came to 66, a dollar higher than the measured target. It's possible that maybe into early this week, we could see that 65 target be met. But that's the double top breakdown from a 671, 68 back to 71 and a breakdown. So 65 is the measured target, and we could already see very deeply oversold RSI at 17 in the hourly chart. MACD is oversold. A bounce is possible. Another key technology sector, which actually could have a strong rebound, because look at this chart. This is a beautiful ascending triangle from where the software sector broke out. And guess where all the core AI IPOs will land up in terms of OpenAI, Anthropic. Those are, almost trillion-dollar valued companies. Their IPOs will land up in the software sector. So if you look at the software sector ETF, the iShares Software Sector ETF, IGV, this is a beautiful ascending triangle. So that breakout from 74 to 95 is $11 added to 95. 116 is that target, not far from where the previous peak was in October last year at 118, 117. So that's got a pullback. The pullback here, we can see active heavy buying on the breakout above 95. It came to close that gap. So two key gaps got closed right here and then right here below, just above 95. Those two gaps have been closed. It's now exactly testing that's what was the resistance line, now the support line at 95. If it resumes its climb, we wouldn't be surprised to see a strong climb back up to a higher high based on just the measured target of this ascending triangle. You draw the trend line through the lows, and it closed right at that ascending trend line and also right at that key, what was resistance, now support line at 95. So this, if any, is a sector that we feel has upside to higher highs possible in the weeks ahead and gives us a possibility that perhaps the software sector could see some strong gains in the next few months. With that, just to sum it up, we saw a big collapse in cryptos. That started off the sell-off in the what we call as the June swoon. Started off right at the beginning of June from the 74,000 break, closed, tested a low below that February low of 60,100, $1,000 lower level at 59,100. In the process of bottoming as lower lows were printed, higher lows in RSI, beautiful positive divergence from there. It's kind of doing a cup and handle breakout. 59 to 63, 4,000 added to 63, 67, 66,700, 67,000 is where this could be. Right now, it's got a pullback, testing that rising 50 period moving average from there. If it successfully tests it, climb up towards the 200 period is possible for the Bitcoin. S&P 500 had a $1.8 trillion wipeout, exactly measuring to the IPO for the largest kind of space stock out there. SpaceX at 1.8 trillion is their valuation, is what they plan to IPO at on Friday the 12th. And that's exactly how Wall Street collected capital to then move into that IPO. It's not going to be, using up 1.8 trillion. It's probably going to IPO for 75 billion for the shares that they're going to be selling out there. But the astonishing amount of the drop in a single day is just stunning that it matches exactly the valuation of SpaceX at 1.8 trillion. Nasdaq had its biggest drop of over 1,100 points, the largest ever on record. What was a leading indicator of the Nasdaq sell-off was this volatility of Nasdaq-100 VXN, a beautiful double bottom, refused to break below the 21, even though Nasdaq kept climbing higher highs. A nice breakout from there. That breakout measured to 30.79, exceeded it, met 30.85, and this has met its target from the breakout. If you look at QQQ, it met its ascending triangle target at 749, came very close to it at 748, topped out at the negative divergence, dropped heavily, sharp waterfall decline on Friday, 4.8% with heavy volume, testing its 200 period moving average at 705 is where it bottomed. Slight possibility it could pull back to 695, but from there find support and get a counter trend move higher. Memory stocks got absolutely hammered. The breakdown from 70 to 63 was measured at 56. It met that, put a low at 55.38. It is right at its key, what was resistance, now support level at 56. So it's kind of also very oversold, ready for a counter trend bounce, having met its target near 56. Look at the drop, 15% drop in memory ETF. Semiconductors had a 10% drop, also getting oversold with RSI 29. It broke from a 618 to a 577. That's about 41 or so. If you take 41 from 577, that's near 536. It came pretty close to it. It came 539. It closed out this gap from the May 22nd at 539. May fall a little more towards 533, which has been previously resistance. So 533 to 536 is where that bottom could happen and a counter trend move higher. Look at the absolutely bearish volume on the capitulation, how much volume happened in that sell-off in that last hour. Magnificent 7 double top breakdown from 68 to 71 measures to 65. It came pretty close, 66.2, another dollar or dollar and a half or so to meet that 65 target is possible. And from there, look at the oversold RSI possibility of a bounce. And finally, the bullish out of all of these is the software, because it had a very nice bullish ascending triangle breakout with a target above 115 towards 116. It pulled back, not as heavy volume as we saw when it broke out. Look at this is a daily chart, look at the heavy volume on the breakout versus the declining volume on the pullback. If it successfully tests this key support level at 95 and then rebounds higher, you can expect a higher high above 108 to climb towards that 116 from this ascending triangle pattern is what we're expecting. Good luck investing. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you for listening.
We are not registered investment advisors and encourage our users to consult with their financial advisors before making investment and trading decisions. Nothing contained in our content constitutes a solicitation, recommendation, endorsement, or offer by us at Chartsarefun or any third-party service provider to buy or sell any securities or other financial instruments in this or in any other jurisdiction in which such solicitation or offer would be unlawful under the securities laws of such jurisdiction.